What's going on YouTube? StreetRunner51 here, coming at you with an updated deck profile today. Today's going to be Noble Knights. One thing I'm doing a little differently about this deck profile is, Noble Knights for the extra deck, it's not really important. If you want to know the extra deck, it's just 3 of each king, 1 high Lonzelin, and then whatever else you think is good. I personally don't think it's really worth going into explanations over the extra deck cards. Anybody can make a good extra deck of rank 4s. Hell, they could probably make a better one than I can because I don't have 101 or Excitation Knight. So, I'm just going to get that out of the way first. And the reason I wanted to profile this specific deck is because when I looked into I was looking at other builds online, I'm like, I think I could actually make a build that's just as good, if not a little bit better, as these ones. Because I've actually been playing this deck for about a year and a half now. And it's just, it's really good. It's just such a phenomenal deck. However, in this current format with how fast the game is, I recommend, if you're going to play it at your local level. Don't go to a YCS with this. You can even probably top a regional with it. I wouldn't say take this to a YCS because it just doesn't have the speed to keep up with the top decks for like 12 rounds. You know what I mean? I'll just get right into it though. So far we got 3 Merlin. Any build of Noble Knights should be playing 3 Merlin, honestly. I'm not going to get into that. Never forget his second and third effects too, by the way. I've seen a lot of people who just, they summon their Noble Knights on their turn, and they go, okay, well, they use Merlin, they go Merlin to Madrot into Boars, and then they just go Overlay. They go Overlay and then attack directly. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're going to use this card the right way, especially if you're going first, you never want to Overlay at the beginning of your turn, because when you're using Merlin, what you want to do is make sure they're not playing Shaddols, and you accidentally Overlay on your turn, and then they can Shaddol fusion from their main deck. You always want to be careful when you use this card. You want to play smart, and that's what this card allows the deck to do, is they allow you to surprise your opponent with, oh, hey, you forgot that I used Merlin, banish, hello, here's a big king. You never want to let your opponent be on top of you by knowing that you can't respond to anything they do. It's just, honestly, it's just not a smart way to play the game. And with this deck, you have to be on your top game if you want to win consistently. I play 3 Madrot, self-explanatory. I've been going between 2 and 3 Boars. Right now, I think 3 Boars is a little bit better. Only because, like I said, I normally would play 2, but the way the current format is, I'd rather not be playing things like Brothers, just stuff that's a little bit gimmicky or slows the deck down or just does random stuff, and it's stuff that's just not important. You want to only play the important cards, so I figured I'll just play 3 Boars in the main deck, and if I'm playing against anything rogue, I can just side the third one out and do other stuff. And 1 Dristan, you need it, especially against Cliff Fort, when you can be popping their scouts, you can be popping their pendulum skills, you could be popping their lose 1 turns, you could be popping a lot of stuff. It's just really important to have Dristan in the main deck. It does too much to not play. Then 1 Gwalshavet. You have to play Gwalshavet at 1, in my opinion, just to keep up, especially because you're playing Gwaine in the deck, and it's there for the OTK, so you want to make sure you can produce the biggest boards possible and be able to get back in the game when it comes to late game, because this deck's meant to grind out against anything else. It's supposed to win the grind game, always. So that's why you have to play Gwalshavet. And I play 2 Gwaine. It speeds up the deck, especially if your opening hand's a little dead. You can just play Gwaine and 1900 beat stick, or you can just normal summon a Boars and then special Gwaine and then make a king late game and win, because your opponent can't always get around the Excalibur and Destiny. Soft lock. And then I play 1 Black Lonzelin. This card is really, 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 really important. I can't stress how important this card is in the deck. You have to play it, because if you open Merlin and no arms, or if you open like 3 monsters and one of them is this and another one is like, say, Boars and another one is maybe like Gwalshavet, and you have no noble arms in your hand, the first thing you're about to do normal summon that Gwalshabad, special summon your Black Lonzolin over it, tribute it, and get Noble Arms. So then next turn you have your Boars plus a Noble Arms. And it sets you up right there. Or you can go Merlin into him, Noble Arms. If you open up none. You have to. Because this is your only way to search a Noble Arms card from your deck. It's the only way. So you have to play it. Just simply put, you have to. And it's good too, because 2000, and plus it's dark. So, I mean, like, if you want to play BLS, you can, I guess. But, I wouldn't recommend it because there's not enough darks. But, yeah. Then one Guinevere. I would play two, but I'm actually siding the second one. I recommend just playing one in the main deck, siding it against the Necroz matchup at 2, so that way if they trish you, they don't get away with killing both of these things. I mean, that way you have a second one to fall back on instead. You know what I mean? Because if you have both of them in the main deck, it doesn't do as much at 2 because you can only use one of them per turn. So, I mean, as good as it is to just go, oh, hey, Guinevere. Boop. And when you have 2 on them, that's a 600 boost with a double protection. So, I mean, it's really good. But it's only really good against a Necroz matchup to have 2 of them, just because it kind of slows the deck down otherwise. But that's the monster lineup. I don't remember how many that is, but I think it's under 20. Should be under 20. Yeah, it's definitely under 20. For the spells, play 1 last chapter. I've seen some people play 2. I've seen some people play 3. I've played 2 in the past. I used to play 1 only if I played a Brothers, but I'm playing 1 right now because I realized this card should only be used once. You should never have to last chapter yourself multiple times in a duel, because if you have to last chapter 3 times in one game to win, odds are there's pretty much 2 things. Odds are either your opponent's deck is a bad matchup for you and you somehow manage to find a way out of it, or 2, your build is probably just not that good. Because if you have to last chapter to stay alive every single turn, if you have to last chapter 3 times, that means your board is nowhere near as built as it should be. Or your opponent's already so far ahead that they practically won the game. This should be your comeback card, like, oh, I last chaptered and now I won because my opponent just can't get around it. Or my opponent they got around my board the first time and that was the only way they could do it. Bam, last chapter, I just did it again. Goodbye. See, that's how last chapter should be. Not just, it shouldn't be a liability where I have to last chapter to win. I have to last chapter to win every single game. That's not how it should work. And so that brings us to the next card, which is 2 Excalibur. I was playing 3 for a while. I didn't like 3 only because it's just, as good as the card is, playing 3 of it is just, it's not the best one to draw. You always want to just re-equip it from the graveyard, because it doesn't re-equip itself, so it's not the best thing to top deck. So, yeah. And never forget about its other effect, too. There's a reason why the text on this one is way longer than the other ones. You can remove this card from the graveyard to special summon a Noble Knight Exceed over your other Noble Knight Exceed that's a higher or lower level. You can't forget that. If it's late game and you have an Artorigus with no materials and your opponent can get over it next turn and it's just a rank 4, remove the Excalibur and make it a Sacred King. That way you get more equips onto it that you probably need more than the ones that are on the Artorigus. And that way you have a material to detach to pop a monster. Or pop back row if it was the other way around. Never forget that, because like a lot of people I see, they don't read their cards and they play this deck because it's an easy deck to learn and play, but it's a hard deck to play well with because there's so many hidden effects and abilities that people just don't think about. But now I gotta start speeding it up because we're hitting the 8-minute mark, we're hitting almost 10-minute mark. So I'll just keep going. 1 Caliburn. You have to play this card at 1. Playing it at 2 is just like it's not that good because with Towers running around, Towers Turbo, this just isn't as viable as it used to be. I like the 500 gain, but aside from that, it really doesn't do enough for you. And then 2 Destiny. I'm not gonna go over that one. That one's obvious. I'll play the 1 Arfugitor because it's honestly like my favorite one. Because popping any set card on the field, and then on top of that, you can equip it to your opponent's monsters, like against the Tellarknights, you can equip it to their Trevor, and then pop, and then you can pop it with something like Gualshavad, and then re-equip it to your Gualshavad, and then pop another card down their side of the field. You know, you can do a bunch of good stuff with it. There's a bunch of tricks. Is it raining? Yeah. Alright. And then 2 Gallatin, because this is your out to towers, basically. This is like the main tower out in this deck, is Gallatin, and it's extremely good, especially when your opponent like puts all the resources into that. And then then we play 3 Rhoda, not even going to explain it. 1 Book to answer monsters. 1 Regeki to answer monsters. 3 MST to answer back row. Okay, so here's the reason why I think this build is better than a lot of the other ones I've seen recently. It starts about here as to why I think that. A lot of people, when they build this deck, they play it to try and lock their opponent out of making a big board by playing things like Kaiser Coliseum, all that. The way I see it, and the way I've actually learned through playing this deck a lot of times, like I've built and destroyed this deck about 7 times, and I've play tested it each time. People can't answer your monsters. People can't get around your board until they can either get rid of the Excalibur that's equipped, or until they can make a monster that outs the entire field anyway, like Excitation Knight or 101 or something like that. So what you should be playing isn't the Kaiser Coliseums, because it's just another thing they can answer with like an MST. Because I figure a lot of the times they're going to have the MST anyway. So you should be playing things like this. You should be playing like the Book of Moon. You should be playing 3 MST to answer their back row, because back row is the only other thing that really hurts this deck. 1 Vanity's Emptiness, so your opponent can't special summon things like the Castell to bounce away your king after they MST the Excalibur. And this is like, the way I lined up the traps are basically to answer those things. I'm playing 2 Call the Haunted. You might be wondering why. Play Call the Haunted because if you revive the rank 5 king, which is extremely easy to make, not only is it a free Exceed out of the graveyard, but if it dies, it gets back another Noble Knight from the graveyard. So it's like it's essentially like a monster reborn, is the way I see it. Like you do, or a 2-for-1, I should say. So I recommend Call the Haunted as well. Plus, if your opponent gets around your board before you can make a king, this gets you back in the game. 2 Breakthrough Skill. Not Fiendish Chain, because I've realized opponents have too much power to just kind of manipulate their field anyway. So you'll Fiendish Chain something, and then it'll become dead because they exceeded with it. Call the Haunted's different because you can control that, but not so much with your opponent. So that's why I play the Breakthroughs instead. Like I said, it's an answer to things like Castell and 101, things that answer you when they MST your Excalibur. Then the last 3 traps are Bottomless Compulsion and Warning. You don't need Mirror Force. I mean, as good of a card as it is, like, trust me, it's good. I'm side decking it, but you don't need Mirror Force. There's no reason to play it. How is your opponent gonna attack over a 3,500 attack monster without the use of something else? They can't beat over that. And if they attempt to just like swing into it, well, you have things like Compulse for that. You have things like Compulse in your Book of Moon if they're just going to try and suicide honest you. So you have things like Compulse and Book of Moon for those kind of days. But then again, if they attack your monster, there's a thing called Destiny that should be equipped to it. So if they're thinking about beating over it, they're not going to have 2 Honests. And if they do, well, they just wasted 2 Honests to get over your monster. And if it's a rank 5 king, you get a monster. Oh, oops, yeah. You get a monster back after you did that. So, like, honestly, you're not minusing yourself any by doing anything. So, like, the way I see it is you should be playing cards like cards that answer monsters that answer your field. You should be playing answers to what your opponent could possibly have against you. You should be playing things like this. Because, like, if my opponent's going to go MST if they have 1 set card and they say MST my Excalibur, you bet your bottom dollar I'm about to chain my MST that set to their set card, because if that's a Compulse, they still can't Compulse my guy. You know what I mean? Like, you should just have answers. because the deck does the work for you. But anyway, tell me what you guys think of that deck profile. I tried to go as in-depth as I possibly could have on the main deck for you guys, just so you had a good understanding of my thought process in making it. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and peace out.